no watulu ua Samoa, ua lauilo aile masanoa, no wanganu malofa abaelea ua mautu.
From the beginning of time, Samoans have relied on their surroundings for survival. Samoa's biodiversity gave people shelter, food, medicine, and water. The oceans provided food and filled other medicinal needs. As time passed, however, the increasing number of people and industrial developments brought drastic change to Samoa's biodiversity and natural environment. Samoa, as a small island state, is vulnerable to natural disasters. Continuous research from the ocean depths to the tops of the highest mountains is done to find ways to help humans maintain a balance between a healthy environment and human needs. People are now trying to salvage what is left from the paths of destruction, and there is nowhere more vital than the Pacific in the search for answers. In this Pacific region, there are still untouched areas yet to succumb to the changes that have brought environmental destruction. In these untouched areas come the stories of what it was like before people, invasive plants, and animals arrived. In Samoa, such areas can also be found in particular on the island of Savaii. There we find one of the biggest land areas in the Pacific which is virtually untouched, the cloud forests. Covering the rugged highlands of Savai'i, these cloud forests are considered worldwide as most important for their high levels of biodiversity. Owned under customary title, the cloud forests are a priority site for conservation in Samoa. The continuous rainforest covers a quarter of the landmass of Samoa. It contains a large number of endemic birds, plants, and invertebrates, and rare ecosystems. Limited research has been done here until 2012, when 14 scientists embarked on a mission that recorded and surveyed the cloud forest and its biodiversity.
The first survey that was ever done was in the early 1990s, and it's taken quite some time to have a follow-up. So we are very grateful to our development partners that have assisted us in this work, and also the coordination that has been enabled between our ministry and government and SPREP.
Well, SPREP's supporting this project because it is providing much more information on a very important biological area in Samoa and in the Pacific, which is the cloud forest of Savai'i. So our involvement reflects the fact that a challenge in the Pacific is that a lot of these important areas there's very little information.
This project, known as BioRap, is a biological rapid assessment and survey of the plants, birds, and animals living in the cloud forest of Savai'i. Awa Olefeilua Inga, a welcoming Awa ceremony, ancient traditions to officially welcome visitors or strangers into a village. This is Saopo, one of the villages in Savai'i with Mount Silisili as its backdrop, the highest point in Savai'i at over 1,800 meters. The visitors are members of the BioRap scientific research expedition to the cloud forest above the village.
The major purpose for this, what we call the BioRap, which is a Rapid Biodiversity Survey, is not to focus just on vegetation or insects or butterflies and plants, but it's trying to get a handle, trying to get an understanding of where everything is most important in terms of its conservation values. And by conservation values we mean the we use the word synthesis, where these values are most concentrated. So we'll be doing spot surveys all over the uplands and the cloud forest. And the cloud forest here is important because it's one of the largest areas of intact forest left in Polynesia. So it's a very special place from that point of view.
The BioRap is a joint partnership initiative that involves the Samoa Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, Conservation International, New Zealand Department of Conservation, the New Zealand Defence Force, and local communities, as well as several other cooperating agencies. Funding is being provided by the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund.
I think this is, especially this highland forest of Savai'i, is as close to pristine and a national treasure for everybody in Savai'i and Samoa to look forward to, trying to ensure can it be maintained in this pristine state well into the future for not just ourselves but our children and our children's children.
After several weeks of consultation with the villagers involved, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment and project team met the village leaders of Aopo to officially start the survey work for the project.
Ole la foi se fai ngā paanga. Ia wha moe la ole fai ngā paanga. Ia umi. Ma ia manuia ele ngata ia manuia ole nu. Ia au nisi foi vaenga ia manuia ele lau tele ole atunu. Ia la peo na ele mawhitanga le nei aso. Ia ole la o te tala mea uma. Ia wha moe ia ele atua ia fisosoani ma ia umi nei mawhitanga. Ma ia iu se manuia.
Local specialists from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment were on hand to provide support and liaise with villagers involved in the project.
Ulanga le whaafisiri pa o ile aso e amakai le ngā ruenga. Ia o ke mga kua uia o le ua amakarga ko ngā ruenga.
Tele sta ua mo Samoa. Samoa atoa le ngata fo ilea o le fio anga nei o Aopo maisi a fio anga o le nei i tumalo. Ona o le tūlanga i le oa wha le natura o o whaapea ona mai tauina pe masalomia fo i olo o I lunga I le atu maunga. Ia o le nofuanga lea le I oa I eni suenga mua. Lala lea o le whaataua o le nei suenga. Ma avea fo le nei awanua e tau awa I ma whalapot tonga fo ele sprep. Ona o se tūlanga I le ngata ina le lei mo le lautele aia o le atu nuu le maua o whaamtalanga e limata ita ina I whai unga le lei. A le whapena fo I ona o ngā e tau atuai I le lalolangi atua le tūlanga o loo iai le tūlanga wha le nātura o si o manga o si o tātua tunu o Samoa nei.
The terrain rising towards the Savai'i cloud forest is rugged. It will be one of the reasons this area has survived invasion until now. The expedition members were given specific tasks. There were experts researching and surveying plants, people working on the collection and documenting of insects, and others that focus on invasive species that could threaten the survival of this valuable biodiversity.
So it's a higher percent of endemics here.
Yeah, the higher elevation things tend to be more endemism.
Yeah. And you can see why you call it cloud forest, because most of the time we're in the clouds up here because we're so high. About 1,500 meters here, 1,600 meters, 5,000 feet. 5,000 feet from sea level.
Ole taeola neo leo matou sauni atu e whaatino ia se poloka fo lea pea male 5 mita le tele. Ole fuafuanga I whaapea ona fuaina la au uma I tutonu le poloka lea. E ngata I la au e 5 sentimita nga I lunga lo la tau lapo. Ia whaapea fo ila la au fo I o lo mau I tutonu e ese mai la au e 5 sentimita nga I lunga. O le whamoe moi am ta ituina uma po ai tu ai ngala au ese mau I le vaenga o le ele e fua le mau lunga e mau ai. Ia e whapea nā ona mata ituina uma.
For us, this is a biodiversity survey. It's about exploring and finding out the things that no one knows about in a place like this. And so because of that, I guess we're interested in techniques like this. In fact, I can just see a moth thinking and going in there now.
And it catches all kinds of things like spiders that balloon on their web, it catches flies, it catches beetles, wasps, bees, So we're looking forward to a big haul.
We are sampling now. We're sampling the shrubbery, we're sampling the mosses and rocky areas where the moths feed. So there's all kinds of moths. Some of them feed in mosses, some of them feed on shrubs, some feed on herbs and grasses, and there's some feeding on trees. And we're going to find out that actually, when you add all that together, there's 100 species of moth up here, of which many might not have been documented before.
The reason we're part of this study, this BioRap, the reptile team, is because there's no reptiles known from Samoa above about 750 meters. And that's the highest elevation, so everything above 750, we don't know anything about reptiles.
It's a pristine forest, it's a wilderness, right? Only native species in here. But when you push a road all the way through, the seeds of plants, they come on the trucks or the vehicles, and they come in and they can spread into the forest, like this weed here. So it also is a way for cats and rats and other animals to come into the forest. They walk along the road, just like humans do.
And this is a new track, a new road coming up here, so there's a chance there's no rats have come up here, which might explain why we seem to have seen quite a lot of birds with chicks and fledged juveniles flying around. So the birds here seem to be quite successful at breeding compared to maybe if you go over to Apollo or somewhere like that. So we're just seeing here, if that's our theory, we're seeing now if the rat, actually if there are many rats here, and what species of rat, if there is a rat, and then and whether and you know, so what that kind of densities are at this altitude.
This area is unique, with more than 100 craters and areas of recent lava flow not far from older volcanic rocks.
This is the most recent lava flows in Samoa. This one, Maungamu and also Matavanu from last century. But Samoa has had many different periods of volcanic activity. In fact, 6 different periods over the last few million years. But this is the most recent one. And because it's a very recent lava flow, you don't have the thick forest that you have, say, over there towards Sili, to that mountain over there. That's because that's on a much older lava flow. I'm not quite sure exactly how much older, but many thousands of years old. Whereas this one here is very recent, and so you haven't got a chance to have the big thick forests yet. But over time, there will be forests forming here just like over there.
It is an area that is poorly understood due to its inaccessibility, heavy rain, harsh terrain, and lack of rivers.
It's a very interesting plants. They look like little Christmas trees. It's called Lycopodium. We also have a lot of true mosses as well. And we also have lots of lichens. These ones here, white ones. So unusual plants growing up here.
The trees are dripping wet, and you have lots of ferns growing. They're covered with ferns. This is very unique. There's hardly any island in Polynesia that has a forest like this. And it's basically untouched. The only thing that's damaged is this road going through here. But most of it is just absolutely beautiful, almost all native species.
You've got a big area around Savaii, which is, you know, rat-free, if you like. But each time a track goes up, not only does the track provide an opportunity for rats to come in, but then you have a buffer zone 5 kilometres either side into which rats will spread. So it's, you know, if the birds are affected by rats, that's a big problem for birds. It may be that this track is so recent that there are no or few rats up here. So, but it may be that in 10 years' time, if we come and do it again in 10 years' time, there may be a lot more rats.
One of the biggest threats seen in the Pacific Islands is the extinction of bird life. About 200 types of birds have been listed as extinct over the past century. In Samoa, this survey seeks to find out more about the native birds which have survived the harsh surroundings of the country's forests. Natural disasters and logging have threatened the survival for many of the remaining birds.
So we're putting up sound recorders, and these sound recorders are used to monitor the birds here up the side of the mountain. And we're particularly looking for ma'o, which are endangered, manumea, which could be becoming critically endangered here in Samoa because they're very rare. And we're also looking for puanai, which is possibly extinct, but possibly we could find it again. And that's a nocturnal species. We have these sound recorders set up so that they collect the calls of the birds, and then we can analyze those calls on the computer to tell what the species are.
The survey couldn't have come at a better time. The scientists recorded several invasive species which were now making their way up to the cloud forests of Savai'i.
There's a lot of evidence of cats up here, and one of the things that might be a problem for the birds.
Many new species of land snails, moths, and a few new plants were discovered.
There's quite a change between about 1,300 and 1,400 metres, and that's where the cloud forest starts. So the composition of the forest, the trees changes at about that elevation. The snail fauna changes as well.
And when you've set them like this, you can look closely at the characters. You can see what small differences between species. And so, for example, this one here and then this one below it, that's actually two species, both species of moths that feed on ferns. It's a way of discovering biodiversity. You can't just discover it by watching it fly past, eh? So with insects, it's all right to catch a few and have a look.
Found nowhere else but Samoa. This is Samoan plant. Yeah, atoto maybe is there's one on the beach called atoto. It's related to this. Atoto vow we can call it, but it's not the real name for it. The V vow is found only in Samoa, and Mautamea found only in Samoa. That lily is only in Samoa.
This is the vivau tree. This is one of the most important trees in the forest here. It's the biggest tree in the cloud forest, and it's only found in the cloud forest. So it's a special tree. It's endemic to Samoa, vivau, and as you can see, there's a lot of different plants growing on it. In English they're called epiphytes. There's a lot of lilies, these ones that look a little bit like big pineapples, growing all over the branches, and there's lots of mosses and ferns and lichens and orchids. So it's almost like a complete ecosystem growing on these trees.
Rough weather proved to be the biggest challenge for the surveyors. Heavy and prolonged rain meant that at one stage, 3 teams were stranded in very wet conditions. The low cloud and rain also meant that helicopter evacuations were impossible, and for several days, all that could be done was to wait for the rain to clear.
We went in on it, it was a nice marsh, so it's really easy to land, lovely place, really good to go to, fantastic. Then after a day and a half it started to rain, and that's why it's a marsh. It's not a marsh, it's a lake. And it's now 3 metres deep, so where we were dropped off is now 3 metres underwater, 2.5, 3 metres underwater. And we had to keep pushing up the slopes to get out of the way of the water.
Despite this, many teams continued their research and some interesting discoveries were made.
Just the cats and the numbers of cats, and you can see their scats along the road, and they're full of bones. Some are full of rat bones, some we found had cat claws in them, so the cats were eating other cats.
It is important to note that rats and cats are not native to Samoa. An interesting feature of the Savai'i uplands was that various species of plants associated with temperate climates were found, like edible blueberries and a close relative of New Zealand's pohutukaua tree. This area also regularly experiences frosts.
Want to find out what trees are the most common trees. So we go into an area and we measure out, let's say 500 square meters, and then we measure every tree and identify every tree in that. And so that way we determine which trees are common and which ones are rare, and which ones are present as well. And we've done this at a series of plots, and it changes with elevation. So at the top you have vivau trees and Mautamea, and then lower down that disappears and you get other species. So all this is very little studied, so this is all a lot of new work for us.
It was clear that this is a place with global value that needs to be documented, and it is work that the experts will take several months to test and record.
Well, these are what in New Zealand they call cave wettas. In the United States we call them camel crickets or cave crickets. It's a really interesting family of crickets, but they have no wings. So if you look at them, the way they make their sound is they drum. They drum their hind legs, and the different species have different drumming patterns. And so the female hears the male drum, and then she goes. And so it's different than crickets that have wings and rub the wings together to make sounds. So this is a very ancient kind of group of crickets that we found.
This is a genus called Ostodes, and this genus is only found in Samoa. There's about 8-9 species have been described only from Samoa, and this upland survey we've found at least another 2 species that are only found in the cloud forest. So these grow up to about 30 millimeters.
This is like a national treasure for Samoa to have this information and to keep it in collections. Yeah, it will be housed in collections, perhaps somewhere around the Pacific, we hope. It's information that will be available for years to come, actually, many years to come. And when you look back and say, well, has there been any change? Has there been any climate change? What's the effect of having invasive organisms come? You can look at these collections and say, well, these things used to be here, or they're still here.
Olo mawal ma le foi va ngole va matua a pe foi male manutangi ya matele la voice foi manu la tunu usa matoso suin yo lo mfeo na mawele va matua se vang na ile le manu mea mal puna yo lo faiona le mawele foi va ngole va matua yo ono le malu lu ole ni va matua.
And if you think of those words, critical ecosystems, that's what we're working in. We're definitely in a very special part of our planet. You know, we take for granted that it's a special part of Samoa, but we maintain that this information is going to verify the fact that this area is globally important, not just nationally and regionally important, but globally important. So we'll be working with our partners, MNRE, CI, and of course SPREP will be providing whatever support we can to bring all of the results together. And we're looking forward, of course, to seeing the results of the work.
For the local village communities, the results of the survey can provide them with an understanding of the global significance of the cloud forest and why it is important to conserve the cloud forests of Savai'i. The third stage of the BioRap will see the results of the survey being shared with the local communities in Savai'i. That will be the start of a series of actions by all partners to help strengthen conservation of the cloud forests. Subsequent conservation proposals and activities will be based upon the results of the BioRap survey.
Ile tele ngala ia ole fainga paanga ia tele wasturanga le tele ile ngata ole o fai paanga ile sprep male mtanga luenga ia ole fu wa vatu le fainga paanga no umafio anga ia ola to wa fu paanga e maua le nga maua le ta ua mo la to li mata ita ina ia la to fu anga fai pe ama ia fa tino ngal luenga ni.
The options that community leaders and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment need to address if the Savai'i cloud forests are going to be subjected to some active and long-term conservation management strategies and actions. As the Savai'i rainforests are owned by the Savai'i village communities, they must therefore decide how they want to manage these forests. Making the right choices depends on the best information being provided. For conservation and development to find a balance, decisions and compromise need to be made to sustain livelihoods of people and long-term protection of the Savai'i forest upland biodiversity. On the international level, conservation programs can provide assistance and support for the people and the environment of Samoa for now and in the future. Alternatively, as one of the world's biodiversity hotspots, the sustainable management and long-term conservation of the Savaii cloud forest has global significance.
What that means for Samoa, it really underlines the importance of protecting this site, and it underlines the importance of working with and through the local community, particularly through the village of Aopo, to look at ways in which we can practically protect and conserve this site.
There is benefit in knowing through the years that we have some of the organisms or flora and fauna that are found only in Samoa. We also start looking into developing programs that would contribute towards the conservation, but the educational benefits is quite significant. This is an area of research that is really attracting a lot of interest. The biodiversity conservation is one of the key areas that we focus on our day-to-day work and also in our annual programs.
SPREP's work is based on partnerships because the challenge of the environment is so broad that no one agency can deal with them alone. This project's a fantastic example of partnership with Conservation International through the Critical Ecosystems Partnership Fund, with and through the many world-class scientists that were involved in this project, between SPREP and the Ministry of Natural Resources, and also with other partners such as the New Zealand Defence Force, which kindly provided helicopters that made the survey a reality.
The second phase of the BioRap project concluded with an Ava ceremony held at the camp. This was attended by representatives of various villages in the district and project facilitators.
Avale le tua mo pina sit fier fa moi elo fam fa pui mai ya nga luenga ma so ya so ko ni ma kanga ya manguya
Samoa lava,